I'll start on a topic that you know pretty well, and that is testosterone. Is it just a Western problem? What is happening to testosterone?
That's a very relevant question. Is this just in the West?
What are the countries that have the longest lifespan on record at the moment? It is.
What happens when these guys come off cycle as well? They deflate, they balloon up with body fat.
Well, is the stress of removing everything and not having anything in plastic again going to do you more harm?
It's what are you willing to commit to, right? So some people might not be willing to commit to complete total change in their life, but if things are bad, kind of had that decision made for you.
Coaches don't know enough to make original content that helps their clients, and the clients become collateral damage.
We need balanced, not boosted hormones. Anyone says they're going to tell you how to boost your hormones, run a fucking mile.
The stresses that our ancestors had to deal with were hunting, surviving the climate, or that meteor's looking pretty close.
I've been satisfied by a strawberry. That has to go in the trailer.
So Rob, it must have been about 18 months ago we did this episode talking about testosterone. It was probably one of the early ones before we had you on as a regular co-host. And I thought this would be really interesting to talk about today because I just sent you a reel. And as of recording this episode, our 2024 predictions episode has just dropped. And one of the predictions that I've already gotten right is the term misinformation will be the hot topic of the industry. And I read it to you off air, but I want to read it to everyone that's listening or watching. So I do a Friday quick thought on my Instagram, at Kingsley Dutton, give it a follow, where I basically just do a weekly dick kick of truth. This week's script is, if your only education in the fitness industry is YouTube and your business mentor, you don't have a right to use the term misinformation. If you don't even know information, how can you add a miss? And so I wanted to, rather than just moan about the industry, because I do that way too much, I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that is actually going on with your guys' clients. And is it just a calorie deficit and progressive overload, or is there other things at play? So I'll start on a topic that you know pretty well, and that is testosterone. What is happening? But I was going to say particularly in the West, but is it just a Western problem? What is happening to testosterone to guys?
That's a very relevant question. Is this just in the West? And I would guess, because I don't know. Obviously, most of the stuff I read is Western literature. I would guess it's the same everywhere, really, because we're all, even you take somewhere like China, still exposed to the same environmental pollutants, still very stressful lives that they're living, still toxicity everywhere. Quality of food's going down, levels of stress are going up, people are too addicted to their phones and not getting out of nature. I would assume that maybe this is the case. I can't think of anywhere. Maybe some of the this is where I'm going to show how bad my geography is. Maybe some of the more Southern American, Samoan, Filipino places, maybe not the case there. Because there's something I read not
But is there a genetic component? So if we look at Samoa, Fiji, right? They could have the same issue, but we don't notice it because there's. I don't know this, but is there a genetic component to higher levels of testosterone? But just assuming from the fact that they're all monsters, and then to go back onto your China comment, not so much China, but if you look at because I did a lecture recently for SMU students about longevity, and dispelling the myths of the blue zone a little bit because the research is a little bit suspect. And we look at what are the countries that have the longest lifespan on record at the moment. It is mostly Asian countries, followed by some Mediterranean countries, and then just a random Australia and Switzerland randomly plonked in there. But Hong Kong, Macau, Japan. So but that doesn't necessarily mean their testosterone's in a good place. It just means they're living longer, which could be other things. That's making up for the lack of testosterone, sort of thing, like a lot of omega-3s and maybe less stress in the older populations as it stands, and maybe it'll change with this new generation. Who knows? But from the Western literature you've seen, what is happening to testosterone levels, particularly in men?
It's interesting. I mean, super quick side note there. Two of my clients live in Switzerland, and they point out very, very health conscious country. Very health conscious country, but doesn't mean that they're immune to the pandemic of low testosterone, because a lot of guys out there, we're seeing 60% overweight, probably sedentary individuals, 28% obese, definitely sedentary individuals, but we've got guys that are skinny fat that are doing multiple, I don't want to shit on runners, but multiple park runs every single week, whatever, distance runs, things like that, who, if they did the T-tests, would probably find out their numbers are low as well. So it's not enough to just be healthy now. You have got to look a little bit deeper and see if you're even giving your body the building blocks for what it needs for hormonal health, which controls everything. I don't want to give too much credence to the people that say it's not calories, it's hormones, because as we know, the two go very much hand in hand. You can't really have full focus and control on one without it affecting the other, and vice versa. So it is definitely time, fellas and females. Fellas and females isn't all right, is it? I was going to say fillies, but that's a bit 1920s America. Fellas and fillies. I'm going with it.
I like it. I bring it back.
It's all right. It's all right. Yeah. Like you have more options of how to gain full awareness of your complete spectrum of health at the moment, right? It's okay. Some places their tests are still a little bit expensive. Some places like Meditechs, you can at least learn what the baseline is by getting their cheapest. If money's the issue, just get the cheapest one. Just see where your hormones are at. Just see if there are any deficiencies you need to worry about. Or maybe go for a cortisol test, because that was the one that shocked me. That was the one that had been ravaging my body for 3 years straight, and I didn't even notice, because it's so easy to just get in this mindset of, I'm doing better than other people. I feel all right.
So
feeling all right isn't feeling amazing.
Run me through that. Like what were you feeling? Like, was there any symptoms, and how did you find out?
Yeah, symptoms were a sharp decrease in muscle mass. I'm going to do a post about this soon, because again, it's one of those things I don't think people talk about enough. I spoke about it yesterday. I called it roid shame. It's guys that have taken steroids, quite clearly taken steroids, but won't admit to that openly on social media. Yes, there's legality issues to that, but they won't even admit to it to the people that they know, because they don't want us to go, oh, it's just steroids and it's not hard work and the eating and the sleep and everything else you've actually done to get that physique. So what happens when these guys come off cycle as well? They deflate, they balloon up with body fat as well. There's the symptoms of inflammation, there's all sorts of stuff, but you still don't see that either. When I was what I would class, and some may giggle, and that's fine, I'm giggling with you, at my most muscular a couple of years ago, and I've got a photo of myself in front of the mirror going, Jesus, how did I get to this? I was skinny kid, then I was skinny fat kid, then I was fat man, then I was super skinny shredded man, and now I'm pretty buff. This is cool. I don't look like that at all anymore. What had been happening was through through life stress, through my dog dying, through my dog getting run over, before anyone goes, oh, dog died. Through my dog getting run over, that led to the end of my marriage, that led to a couple of months later after that, the whole world shut down and I couldn't do the job that I love anymore because of this mystery illness, to trying to make sure I've got enough money, to everyone being weird and horrible to each other, to trying to figure out where the fuck am I going to live now, ending up in a tiny little flat share with a witch and a crack addict. Like, it was a stressful time. I think we've spoken about that, haven't we?
No, I mean, we're going to come back to the witch in a second. I think she put a curse on you. That's what it is.
Another episode on
so lesson today's episode is beware of witches with curses.
But what was happening at the same time, I was eating too much junk. Like, it was symptoms of depression had very much crept in. Wasn't really going out, wasn't socialising, even in the gaps between the lockdowns. Was, as I discovered on a receipt the other day, was ordering like 5 Papa John's within like the space of a week. Like, I wasn't cooking for myself. In Clapham Junction, Battersea area, not the freshest air as well. So in terms of pollutants, just getting hit from every angle of stuff that can raise your estrogen, raise your cortisol, and lower your testosterone. And so over these 2 years, where I haven't really fully committed to trying to eliminate the stress as much as I can. What I then discovered was, through doing the test, that SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, which is a carrier molecule, and most bodybuilders will know of this because it's the thing they're trying to decrease quite rapidly, carries the testosterone molecule around your body. If you've got the right amount of levels, then everything's fine. If you've got higher levels, then the testosterone can't detach from this molecule and it doesn't go to where it needs to in your system. But if you've got low levels, there's nothing. It's just as dangerous as having excessive high levels. In fact, there's more danger. And the things that can cause it mainly are excessive cortisol levels. There's there's tumours. I haven't got a tumour. There's something called Cushing's disease, which is where your body produces way too much testosterone. I think we're going to find this becoming a bit more common with people as well. So you might be exercising like I was. You might still be getting some protein in like I was. I was still getting 15,000 steps a day. It just wasn't doing it in a direction where I was near anyone. So I was still ticking the boxes for health, but I wasn't giving my body the building blocks for not just testosterone. This is what we're going to talk about a bit more, but the precursors to testosterone. Because we've got a low testosterone epidemic at the moment. But if we zoom out and look a little bit further, that I'm pretty sure it will also show high estrogen, high cortisol, high levels of inflammation, low levels of pregnenolone, wrong conversion of progesterone, and low levels of DHEA. So suddenly it's not just a low testosterone pandemic, it's a hormonal clusterfuck, if you think about it. So now suddenly, you're quite right. Calorie deficit doesn't sound like enough to fix all that. Especially not calorie deficit while getting all the junk that the average obese male American man eats at the same time, but stick within your numbers and you'll lose weight.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, we look at what everyone's preaching in terms of calorie deficit. Like, calories, I'm not going to say deficit here, calories in general is going to be the biggest lever to pull in most health issues. If you want to improve thyroid output, you want to improve testosterone, one of the biggest things to do is eat more. And if you want to improve insulin management, the biggest thing to do is eat less. However, calories, like when we actually look at them the way a lot of the fitness industry talk about them, it is only referring to body composition.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about health. And we aren't talking about health, how that impacts body composition. So like it's a lot of, we have a lot of coaches now that are only caring about fat loss, and they're talking it like obesity is to fix all of health. Where there's so many factors in here. And like the amount of videos I've seen of people talking about TDEE and then just got this like 60-70% BMR, and they just go, right, that's coma calories, let's move on to steps. And I'm like, there's 70% of someone's output. And that is going to be like 15 to 20% of that is the liver. We spoke about this in the toxins episode. So now, like going into excessive cortisol, the question with toxins, as we spoke about in that episode, is like, well, is the stress of removing everything and not having anything in plastic again going to do you more harm than the toxins themselves? Because it's so difficult these days. You know, I'm not going to do a Paul Saladino and bring a coconut on an airplane. Do you see that reel?
Hey, surely you can't get these things through customs. Maybe you can. But I didn't watch all of it because I bailed. How's he getting the water out of the coconut? Because he can't take a blade on the plane, can he?
That's a really good point.
I was like, hang on, this is a little bit 9/11 now. We're going to get hijacked airplanes from coconut.
Surely one plastic bottle won't kill you, Paul. Right? I'm a big fan, but like that's a clickbait reel I've ever seen it. But it's like I think so many people are quick to write this stuff off, and like we've spoken about the omega-3s, and you said low DHEA, right? So like inflammation, you mentioned. Things that people write off as like pseudoscience now, doesn't take much scratching to know these are very legitimate things. And it doesn't mean that calories aren't important. There's this tribalism of that it can only be one or the other. It's like, it can be both.
It can be both. And you're quite right. I think most people would, if you really, really cared about your health, you would try and look under the surface of what's happening, you know, same as you would with your car. And I hate that I just said that because I hate the comparisons of cars and body. They're entirely separate things. I prefer fish tanks, but we'll get onto that another time.
It's like, you're on that analogy. It's like if like someone said, your car's broken, your there's some damage with your engine, and your mechanic says, drive it less.
Yeah.
Right, that is not helpful.
Yeah. Or the same as like, okay, it's completely fucked, but you'd notice at the petrol pump, there's a brand new toxin-free, unleaded, super fast absorption rate. It doesn't fucking matter. You've got four flat tires and you haven't changed your oil in 12 months. Like, you're looking at the wrong thing. Yes. So first off, always look a little bit deeper. Look at the blood tests if you can. If you can't legitimately afford them or you just don't have that option to you, look at your lifestyle. Take stock. Do like an audit of what's the quality of food you're having. Like what's the actual ratio of junk to healthy, clean nutrition? Are you hydrating? What's your sleep like? Where would you actually rate your stress? And try and do this on a daily basis. Same as we would say to any of our clients, right? because it's not just enough to look at it, just food and go, right, it's just coming from here. Inflammation can be caused by many, many things. And inflammation isn't fixed by a fucking avocado enema or an aloe vera cleanse. It's through a rapid change of your entire lifestyle, basically. You've got to look at where you're at, whether things are good, whether things are terrible, and what you're willing to commit to. Those two things. Paul Saladino can get on an airplane with coconuts rather than just drinking a bit of bottled water, okay? In the grand scheme of things, is it going to make that much difference? Probably not compared to the amount of radiation he's exposed to when he's, 30,000 feet up in the sky.
Very true.
But let's not talk about that. Because you can't, well, maybe he's got something to combat that. Maybe there's some sort of cloth he puts on his body. I don't know.
Just covers himself in liver skin. It's like outside of his liver coat, you
can get that through customs, easy. But it's what you're willing to commit to, right? So some people might not be willing to commit to complete, total change in their life. But if things are bad, you've kind of had that decision made for you. If things aren't that bad, then you can, commit less to total change, and you can just try small things out. But even if you can't do this upset someone the other day. Even if you can't do a blood test, even if you're not willing to do this entire life audit, just take a look at yourself in the mirror with the top off, and that will tell you everything you need to know. Most fellas, estrogen dominant. High cortisol levels because they're super, super stressed and they're not sleeping. Estrogen dominant because they're drinking too much, they're not sleeping, they're super stressed. Problem is, cortisol's amazing. We need balanced cortisol levels.
Agreed.
We don't want constantly high. We don't want constantly low. It needs to do its natural flow of up and down.
And constantly high will eventually lead to constantly low. And when you get to that point where your adrenals just say, "Nah, mate, you've pushed me too far."
Yeah.
People can't get up in the morning. People have chronically low mood. And people go, "Oh, adrenal fatigue isn't a thing." Yeah, but adrenal downregulation is, and it takes a long time. To correct that balance if you let that go too far. And it's not just solved by eating more food.
No, it's not. When you're experiencing high levels of inflammation throughout the body, your body raises cortisol. Inflammation is just an immune response. Your body raises cortisol because cortisol can actually help decrease some of that inflammation. But the problem is you're constantly recycling that inflammatory environment inside of your body. Therefore, what you need, so another hormone, progesterone, takes a hit. We need the right amount we need balanced, not boosted hormones. Anyone says they're going to tell you how to boost your hormones, run a fucking mile. We want balanced and optimized, not boosted. And the problem is, once you're constantly increasing your levels of cortisol, the progesterone that helps make loads of other hormones, including DHEA, which is one of your most calming, it's the ultimate stress management hormone for decreasing, stress and cortisol. All the progesterone is going to make cortisol to fight this battle. There's nothing left for DHEA. So you're constantly in this cycle of high cortisol, high stress, high inflammation, which, as you just said, eventually leads to body can't keep up with this anymore. It has to crash. Something has to give. It needs energy to fuel something else. There's not enough constantly going into this. And then what happens is you have an increase in estrogen. Instead, these hormones should be managing, especially in fellas, your estrogen balance. I say especially in fellas, but of course, especially in females as well, of course. And there's just not enough building blocks left for it. So what happens? We have constantly high cortisol that might crash into low cortisol. We now have rising estrogen levels as well, which then goes on to affect testosterone, DHT, all the other things as well. I'm not expecting anyone to come off of this and become an endocrinologist. I'm not expecting, even though I'm worried about that this is a direction a part of the industry is going to go without looking deeper into the endocrinology. They're just going to go, this is fixed testosterone, take these supplements, train with weight, sleep, weird shit like, do you know Keno Body?
Yeah.
Greg O'Gallagher? I'd like him. I like him. I don't think he's too much of a snake oil salesman. But
he used to be more than he is now.
He used to be terrible, including where his method originally came from. But you'll see him on Instagram and TikTok, eating this level 8 bees honey or something like that is shown to increase your test. And you look at you go deeper, you look at the studies, and yes, in some respect and some studies, this particular type of bee pollen or honey was shown to, over a long period of time, help increase testosterone levels. But Greg Gallagher has already got the most optimized testosterone levels on the planet. He's super shredded, eats well, fast, which works for him, and he's got a ton of fucking muscle mass on his body, and he's very, very genetically gifted as well. The honey is going to do fuck all for the average man down the pub who can't see his dick just by looking down. He has to bend over. It's not the same thing. So we do simple stuff, and people listening should know this anyway. We're not looking for those little things that we can just grab. You know, if you're trying to hydrate the land, stop trying to grab storm clouds and look at the fucking river that's next to your land. That's a good one. Where did that come from? I'm keeping that. That came out of nowhere. Keeping that one.
But
copyright that now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think as well, it's like that's the thing. What would you say to a coach right now that was going to go, misinformation, just calorie deficit, bro?
Calorie deficit, bro.
Just calorie deficit, bro. Because you just said yourself, right? Look at the river next to your house, so they're going to go, well, okay, well, I don't need to learn any of this stuff. Why is it important for someone to learn more about this?
Well, of course, it's important for someone to learn more than this, because the biggest needle mover, especially fellas, for refix. I've got to stop saying especially fellas. Reason I said especially for fellas is we need to get fellas down to a much, much lower body fat percentage, like 15, slightly below. You're probably going to have a much better chance of resetting your hormones than you're trying to do at 20, 22, 23% body fat. Okay, 15 to 17 is probably a nice sweet spot. You don't need to get shredded if you're just worried about hormonal health, but we do need to drop body fat. Adipose tissue, your fat cells, is part of the damage causing thing here. Okay, for ladies, this is why I said especially for fellas, but for ladies, of course, that's the same. But you're not trying to get below 15% fucking body fat. Please do not try and get below 15% body fat to fix your hormones. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to put that caveat there, to fix hormones, and long term being the issue. If you're a girl that wants to be lean, yes, do it.
Fuck yes.
And I think that is also the key thing here. I think, why is it important for coaches to realize this? Like, even if they don't necessarily need to know endocrinology science to solve these issues, they need to learn a decent amount of what goes on in the hood to make sure they don't cause these issues. It's twofold of learning this. One is understanding the signs and symptoms of somebody with, let's use testosterone as an example, of low testosterone. So you know your diet isn't doing it, right? And I hold my hands up. Early on in my career, I made these mistakes. I had people that they got blood work and the testosterone crashed, and it might not have been directly my fault, but it was in part my fault because I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand the signs and symptoms, which massively smashed my confidence. So now I know what's going to happen. I know the symptoms of, okay, their energy's in the tank, right? The performance in the gym is dropping. They're not getting morning wood. The libido is low, right? These things are super important to make sure that you're not doing harm. The second reason why I think it's important for coaches to know this is to be able to explain it. So if you understand something at a deep level, you never really ever have to use it at a deep level, but it means that when a client is freaking out, and this could be anything, when a client is freaking out about scale weight, when the client's freaking out about lack of progress, when the client's freaking out, like we're doing a deep dive in SMEMO about progress photos. And like we got the last lecture, we went through interpreting progress photos. So if other than just I see abs, like shadow underbellies, right? Where someone's arms sit as they're leaner compared to where they sit when they're bigger. Like if you can understand these things, you go, look, I know you're seeing that bit you don't like, but let me point out these few things here. This is a sign that progress is happening. And you need to be able to do the same about complex topics. Testosterone, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone. If you can understand it enough to explain it to a client, you're going to get so much more buy-in. I've had people retain with me because they feel like I understand stuff, that they're in safe hands. Yeah. I don't know how many clients feel in safe hands with their coach these days.
And all the hormones and the pathways, everything I've already mentioned. How often do I use those words with my clients? Rarely, absolutely rarely. But it pays dividends to know these things beyond just a calorie deficit, because you can put someone into a calorie deficit, they can lose weight. You can still create a hormonal imbalance and an inflammatory environment, especially with some of the methods people are doing now. And then if you don't know how to reverse that, that's when you end up buying into the Gary Breckers, the Paul Saladinos, the 78-hour water fasts and shit like that, because you don't actually know. So where are you going to get your information from? Whatever's been pummeled in front of your face.
Yes, but I also agree that I also think people like, and again, this is partly their own fault, and they're playing the social media game very well. But I do think the Paul Saladin and Boredom Brecker get unnecessary hate.
Without doubt.
And it brings back to that quick thought I quoted at the start. If you don't understand misinformation, how do you add a miss on front of it? Right? If we look at Paul Saladino, right, I can watch Paul Saladino and I can extract the good and ignore the rest. What we see now is that coaches that assume everything's through a calorie deficit because I generally think, and this is going to sound harsh, the ego won't allow them to understand stuff. They don't put themselves in rooms where they could be wrong because we're in a generation now where everyone wants to have their balls tickled all the time and they don't like it when they're not. That they've seen somebody else on social media criticize Paul Saladino, so I'm going to criticize Paul Saladino. Look at Eddie Abuse.
Yeah,
like 90% of Eddie Abuse messages sound.
Exactly.
But if you go on Instagram, you'll see a reel of hate every single day, and it doesn't affect. It doesn't affect him.
No,
he's benefiting from this, and I don't think the coaches really dislike him either. They're just hopping on a trend because it's going to get them engagement. And this is the scary thing. The scary thing with this stuff is that coaches don't know. I said I wouldn't make this me moaning about this today, but I am. Coaches don't know enough to make original content that helps their clients, and the clients become collateral damage because your clients don't know who Eddie Abu is, and you slamming people all the time puts them off your product. And if they do sign up, you don't know enough to help them.
Yeah, this is why, God bless him. This is why, partly, many other reasons as well. Partly why I'm not a big fan of James Smith, because the videos that made him famous, as consistent as he was and as good as those videos were, just didn't sit right with me. It was too much moaning, too much criticizing, too much calling out, and not enough. Here's what you could actually do that's going to help you. And that doesn't mean I'm saying that he's not put anything out there that can help people. Of course it flipping can. But if that's the message I'm getting, then other people are going to get that message, and that's a load of people that are never going to work with him. But you have to realize that you've got that on a scale with normal people that are not necessarily on Instagram looking for help. They're just on Instagram and seeing too many things. But when it comes to needing help, you might have put them off a long, long time ago because you're just coming across as a negative, jealous. There's pretty visible jealousy in a lot of these videos as well. And again, I don't really hear the fix being said at the time. There's the criticism, and then there's the most basic information. There's not really deeper explanations of why he's wrong or what you should focus on instead. It's just, I disagree with this message. He's stupid, and that's it. And okay, well, who did that help? You got extra likes, but you didn't get any clients out of it, though, did you? Of course not. So the industry helped create Eddie Abu. Yes, he was around winning trophies way before the industry, but the industry created this era of Eddie Abu's online infamy, shall we call it?
Yes.
When the majority of information he is saying on a soundbite level isn't really wrong. Like, should you go for 2 eggs or a protein bar? Well, you're getting a fuck ton more nutrition out of the eggs. Of course you are. But there's obviously nuance to it. But we're not going to go down the Eddie Abu route.
No, but I will end on the Eddie Abu thing. Do you think the Eddie Abu craze has come about? I don't want to be necessarily too mean to Mr. Abu. But because I don't want to join the bandwagon, but he's not always the brightest person when it comes to comebacks. He's also very aggressive and emotional with his comebacks. He also sounds probably dumber than he is. So people think it's an easy pop. And I find that less people criticize people with doctor in front of their name.
Yeah.
Like how many people who do video, if Paul Saladino said, I'm going to dedicate the next month to replying to every single one person who reacts to my videos, how many people could hang with Paul Saladino?
Oh yeah.
Like, I think it'd be hard. I'd give it a go, but I'm not claiming I would either. You know, so we are. I think there's an element of it is the equivalent of bullying the small fat ginger kid.
Yeah, without a doubt. And
this really makes the industry look bad that we are doing that.
Yeah, I said this to you not so long ago with a video you did. I said that's like That's like taking a mick out of the special needs kid at school, because some of these more famous, figures in the industry who, again, I question what most of them do. Some of them, I think they're just making videos and maybe getting sponsorship deals. I never see anything to do with clients or who they're actually helping. But they're
Don't worry, they'll have a
super
business
famous,
soon,
super,
mate.
yeah, probably will. So they're super algorithmic, if that's even a phrase. But it's giving more information to people than the videos that criticize, because they've got the bigger audiences. They're explaining their side a hell of a lot simpler, and there's actually and they don't. They're not famous from their criticisms of other people. They're famous from giving their information out in a very, very simple way. Whether that information's correct or slightly dodgy, they're giving it out in a very, very simple way for people to understand, and they're the people that need it most. And then when we come in with heavy, heavy criticism and jargon, because most of the industry doesn't really understand the science behind it, we're just putting off the people that need help. And if anything, we're creating... This is part of the biggest thing Eddie Abou does, by then calling out the people who are calling him out. He creates a massive us versus them tribe, and he gets Team Abu, and they become even more dogmatic and even more sold into what he says. Basic marketing. Same as any war.
To bring this back to the testosterone thing, right? And to link it very much so, right? Like, we see a lot of the trends now, especially in the calories only trend. And I want to find out where this message stops becoming useful for this. I almost want to use this podcast to find this line and find where the middle ground actually is between calories versus hormones. Because, like, as I said, right, and I'll go into a bit here for people who have not watched previous episodes, I've gone into this in more detail, right? If we look at calorie surplus, there is going to be some negatives for calorie surplus, right? You potentially going to become more insulin resistant if you do it for long enough. You might find that you might increase inflammation if you spend too long in a deficit, especially if you start to gain quite a lot of body fat, right? Body fat off the adipose tissue also stores toxins. Make sure you might have more of a toxic load, which in turn will not impact the liver very for good. You might have cholesterol and lipid issues if you spend so long there. Digestive issues if you've eaten too much food for long, especially when we're bulking, we're really pushing the food. Right? So there's these negatives here, right? Of gaining fat is another one, right? But then we've got these positives: building muscle, increasing testosterone, increasing thyroid, right? If you flip that into a calorie deficit, right? What people think is the cure-all, right? We have losing body fat, dropping inflammation. That's good. Improving insulin sensitivity. That's really good, right? Potentially improved like cholesterol, lipids. Potentially improved digestion, right? But you have more diet restriction. Whereas in the surplus, you have more flexibility. You have lower testosterone, lower thyroid. And I'm a very firm believer that before you start looking at supplementing iodine, increase someone's food if you want to help with the thyroid, right? Doesn't mean iodine supplementation is useless, by the way. It's just that, like, it's a thing that might support somebody in a deficit, but it's not. If someone's got Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, the first thing you're not going to do is going to go, here's some iodine, now have 1,000 calories. But I look at things like this, and I look at a lot of I'm glad I can't remember his name because I would have called him out. But you know the guy I'm talking about, right? Irish fella, all his reels about making sandwiches, and he's got like amassed like millions of followers, and now he teaches other people to get to 1 million followers, right?
I know exactly what you mean.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying his name, but I know what you mean.
And you will see it. You will see every fitness coach do the same reels. It's here's my high protein, low carb custard cream egg dessert, or it's I hate cream eggs. So you love cream eggs, but you want a diet. Well, this is how to make your entire diet full of cream eggs and this sort of thing. At what point do you think some of these recipes are doing more harm than good? That's the question I'm essentially asking. Is at what point is yes, you're in a calorie deficit, but you've removed so far from nutrition? Because what we'll see people in the reverse of Eddie Abou slamming eggs, we'll get people going, and I've seen it, cut eggs out your diet, they're too calorie dense. Have my
we saw
chocolate egg granola instead.
We
saw. Where does that become counterintuitive? Where's that line?
I could not believe that.
Yeah, like where is the line between nutrition, like nutrients, when it comes to these hormones and calories, in your opinion?
That's what the industry seems to be forgetting. This could be the argument of, well, I didn't learn this on my level 3 PT course isn't enough anymore, because you've got the internet, you've got the free internet at your fingertips to learn absolutely everything that you would ever possibly need to learn, right? It's all free. Or you could fast track it and pay and learn from someone. There's just no excuse anymore. And I think a lot of it is coming from people that found their way to be an online coach with zero qualification to begin with anyway, but still, same thing. You should be able to learn this stuff regardless whether you're educated or qualified or not. And the focus on ease and fun over nutrition, over nutrients, is a massive cause of all the damage. Because if you look a little bit deeper, we're creating disordered eating. Not an eating disorder, but disordered eating, because now you're telling your clients that it doesn't matter what you eat. As long as you get your protein levels, you can eat all these different fake away recipes that are very, very low in nutrition. So cool, you've just made an air fryer kebab. Fan-freaking-tastic. You've made a flipping deep fried in coconut oil fucking wrap burrito cunt thing. I don't know, because as soon as I see these clowns, I switch off, right? Whatever the hell. But I've been down this route. When I went into the if it fits your macros craze, fantastic. I could eat whatever the fuck I want. And then you realize you can't eat whatever the fuck you want, but you can make these lower calorie versions of whatever the fuck you want. Protein frosting, yeah, that's a fun thing to do on a Sunday morning.
Well, that's a key point as well, right? You talked about cortisol earlier on, right? And how we need cortisol, but the problem is that whereas before, and I hate ancestor comparisons, but it's fair, right? The stresses that our ancestors had to deal with were hunting, right? Surviving, right? Surviving the climate, surviving a tiger wanting to kill you, or that meteor's looking pretty close. All of these things are short term. I hunt, I relax and eat. Now all these things roll into what? So we've now got people who, coaches who are 21, 22 years old, and again, I won't say him by name, but this is a different person. But sorry if you listen to this, because you'll know it's you. I know somebody who claims online, who literally says, as he's hooked on many reels, as the UK's youngest personal trainer, like inexperience is a flex. Your potential clients aren't going to care about that, mate. They really aren't.
You've just cut off 90% of your potential.
If you want to work with a 34-year-old lawyer, he wants experience. He doesn't go, oh, you're 18? Oh, why didn't you say that before? Oh, let me give you my money. You know,
that's terrible, because you're using that as the flex. And okay, you may have got in shape before, but you are playing into most people's fears that this getting lean game is only for young, already in shape men and women who are already in the fitness game. You've just confirmed that belief for them, which means they're never going to come to you. I said, I'd fix that message now, bro. If I was you. Assuming it's a man, of course, a man. I know it is.
It is a man. It's also the same person.
I know it is.
He's also the same person that tried to do Dominoes a day. And guess who he's working with for a social media marketer?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And
explains it all. Yeah.
And like, so, but you see these people who are like, they're young, 18 in this case, metabolically healthy people. Your clients who are 35, 40, right, might be super stressed. They might have this cortisol crash. They might have a progesterone issue. They might have an issue with SHBG. They might have an issue with low testosterone. Right? It is not enough to just do the same things you've done with everybody else, and you are doing that client a disservice. You're potentially putting their health at harm, and this is the thing that really, really scares me: is that people will get duped by the message of doing these things. But onto my point about cortisol, is that we've got these people that are super stressed out, and like, how long does it take to make protein frosting? Like, how long does it take to make these granola, cream egg, protein desserts, and rather than just put a steak on a grill?
Yeah. And it used to be the case of half of the ingredients you needed, you couldn't get. You had to order on Amazon before Amazon Prime even existed, right? Okay, things are easy to get now, which is terrible. But essentially what you're doing is you're not fixing the relationship with junk. Okay, you're doing a better thing than them having junk, but you're also teaching them at the same time that it's okay to eat junk. So what is it? Why bother with this protein frosting and these other things? But you're creating other versions, albeit slightly healthier, of hyper palatable foods. And so this high protein, lower calorie version of Subway or whatever the hell it is going to become that the person who really needs help, who has disordered eating, who has completely fucked hormones, who has excessive adipose tissue, who has very, very bad emotional habits related to food, is going to go, oh, cool, this is the fix. They're going to eat it. They still haven't fixed their hunger. They still haven't fixed their habitual cravings and the binge eating. They're going to go for another one of those and another one of those. But in their head, they're going, it's fine. It's high protein, it's lower calorie. They're going to outdo their surplus while still eating these things. And you might argue all that, well, that's why I'll coach them not to do that. Well, then why not just coach them to fill their diet with healthy protein?
And it's harder. It's
so
harder to do that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the argument I had a video recently about stop shitting on Ozempic, right? And it's not like I'm not, before anyone comes for me, I'm not encouraging Ozempic. I'm not going to tell someone to go to the doctor and get Ozempic. But if you've got someone that's morbidly obese, before we start looking at the negative side effects of muscle, first off, most people that are morbidly obese don't have enough muscle mass truly to worry about losing. The biggest thing that's going to impact the health is losing some of that weight, right? Now, you trying to tell them, if you put your supplements next to your toothbrush, that's habit stacking. James Clear, you should be able to do that. And like, they are like, I don't care, I'm hungry. And that's all their brain's thinking. If I can give them something that allows you to calm their hunger, they might be more receptive to some of the back end stuff that now might help them in the future. Food volume. Yeah. And I think food boredom is a skill and an important skill. I know this sounds mad because everyone wants to make food like taste sensation. But part of the reason why people in the 50s weren't overweight compared to people now is that right now, when we finish this episode, I could get any food from any cuisine in the world. It could taste amazing. It could be quick. It could be a sandwich and a chocolate bar from Tesco's. I can get it without even cooking it, right? And when we look at back 50, 60 years ago, these element people didn't overeat on calories because not only were there more voluminous foods that filled us up, but there's an element of, this is why when you look at research of long-term weight loss, people who eat the same thing every day tend to lose weight for longer. Why? Because they're a bit bored of their food. If I've eaten steak and potatoes and vegetables, I might like the first little bit of it, but after a while, I'm like, it's the same. If everything was amazing, like an orgasm in my mouth, I would keep eating this beyond my calorie range. So, as you said, we've not fixed those cravings. They're going to want more because a little bit of food boredom, like teaching someone hunger is okay. This is why fasting isn't terrible, because the biggest thing I've got from long-term fasting, we can talk about autophagy, and again, autophagy, essentially, it's if you do it's like creatine loading. Autophagy is like creatine loading. You could creatine load for a week and get creatine into your system quicker and get maybe an extra week of benefit, right? So it's not a negative thing. It just doesn't really make that much difference having 5 grams a day and getting it in your system over 2-3 weeks. Yeah. Autophagy, you could do it with a fast in a couple of days, or you could do it in a deficit in a couple of weeks. Take your pick, right? Yeah. But it like long-term fast, like you go, oh, I'm hungry. It's fine. It's okay. Like you were sad and now you're happy, and you are happy and now you're sad. Hunger will vanish. And I think these are skills that coaches aren't utilizing now because they are younger coaches in particular, and this may sound like an old man, but locked into this. They have an instant gratification generation. Yeah. And so rather than lean into this, maybe leaning out is the way forward. Or maybe I'm just an old fart doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
That was exactly what I was going to say. It's almost we've got fearful of hunger. And I've seen promotion of, on this diet, you'll never get hungry. Well, that to me says that it's either not fixing leptin and ghrelin levels, or it's not really much of a calorie deficit whatsoever. And you're never going to go beyond maybe your first 5 kilos, right? Hunger is very, very important, and a good marker of if you are in a deficit or not. How do you think we measured deficits 50 years ago? We didn't have MyFitnessPal and things like that. Hunger was one of the most important things, and without going too deep into it again, if you can optimize and balance your leptin and ghrelin levels, you've probably got a much greater chance of fixing all the others. But again, it's not just calorie deficit, and it's certainly not calorie deficit with the inclusion of hyperpalatable and inflammatory foods and environments as well, not just the food, your environments as well.
But on that, because there's a lot of people that say inflammatory foods is misinformation. Sure. So what's the truth there?
Well, the truth is looking at your entire environment, sedentary lifestyles, toxins, pollutants, and toxins is such a, bastardized word, but it's a real thing. In fact, I've probably got it saved in my favorites. One of my favorite Poliquin articles of all time. This is the stuff I don't really hear. So, some Poliquin stuff less relevant now. This, I don't believe so at all. BPA, which we know, in your reusable plastic bottles, your kids, I love this, and this is Poliquin's words, kids' sippy cups. Imagine, just picture him saying that. The lining of food cans, parabens, which are in your cosmetics, your shampoos, phthalates, which are in scented fucking candles, air fresheners, obviously soy, which will cause, a bit of an argument. What will cause an even bigger argument is the estrogens in beer, statins, all sorts of stuff. There's so many things that can cause inflammation.
And that's the key point. It's the amount of them rather than individual ones. Because what we'll see is that someone like Lane Norton, and I like Lane, but a lot of criticism that I have of Lane Norton is you go, right, there's a human randomized control trial where we gave people over 6 weeks, which isn't long enough to see what the impact is for a start. Plastic bottles versus glass bottles. And then we looked at liver values, for example, right? And there was no difference. And okay, let's put aside the fact short-term study, right? But even if that was conclusive, that BPA in your plastic bottles isn't anything to worry about. But let's say there's a 1%, right? So not really important. I'm not going to tell people to stop with plastic bottles. And this is where people go, no, I'm not going to tell people to do this. This is misinformation. Cool, right? Then we've got the stuff on our hair products. It's another 1%. Then we've got stuff on our cans, another 1%. Then we've got stuff from our factories, another 1%. Then we've got stuff pumped in the air, another 1%. And this is the stuff we're not looking at. A lot of the research is because by design, and rightly so by design, we are testing either this one thing. We want to control every other variable so we can test one thing.
Yeah.
But it does mean that we never get any research on what the combination of these things do. Because it wouldn't be good research. So
very true.
If we have 500 toxins in the air, and they all create 1% of a negative impact, that's a 500% negative impact on your health.
Yeah.
And this is the danger of not knowing a little bit about this stuff. I don't know everything about the liver and toxins. I know my fair share, but I know enough, and I'm learning more considerably by the day, to know that look, can I remove some of these things? Can it be helpful? Or if I can't, understand that if we use that stress cup analogy, I might need to remove some other things in the cup because to make up for the fact that there is is part full before he even started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not most people know. To fix your health issues, it's fairly obvious the main needle movers that can help you do that. Most people know they probably should move a little bit more. They contemplate going to the gym, but they don't necessarily know the optimal program to follow. They might just end up in an exercise class or something like that. People will go to Weight Watchers, Slimming World, and learn a little bit more about healthier foods and tracking your weight, things like that. Like all the information's out there. I think it's rare that someone doesn't actually know, but they're not necessarily in the decision-making stage to do something about it, right? So most people will know they've probably got to cut down on the booze a little bit. They've got to cut down on the junk food a little bit because of the health issues that can be related to it, because of the lack of nutrition in there, because there's healthier, better foods that will help you fix everything beyond calorie deficit. But when you've then got someone trying to enable those old habits and keep them in their life, you're just making it much, much harder for them to do. You're creating more confusion. And you're never going to help them move away from this negative environment they're in, both physically and emotionally as well, because your physical health is tied to your emotional health and vice versa, and your self-worth as well. And therefore, what's going to happen by the end of it? More people, when there's more personal trainers and more access to personal trainers because of online than ever, we're still seeing heart disease going up. We're still seeing obesity rising. We're still seeing depression rising. So obviously what we're doing isn't fixing any of this stuff. When we are, sadly, not the most important thing in fixing these issues, but we're the most easily accessible. Because near enough every gym has got a bunch of PT, every town has got a bunch of PTs and a bunch of online coaches and things in it. And we're the ones that are so obsessed with our message going viral on social media. We're the people that someone who needs help comes across first before the doctors or the actual medical experts 100%. Or the endocrinologists, because they're too busy working with clients. They're too busy.
100%. And if there's something to leave this with here, right? And I think you summed up the responsibility we should have as coaches very well.
Yeah.
But for the coaches who are putting out content like this, who have been very lean, this will resonate a chord with you. And for the coaches who are putting this message out, trying to get clients very, very lean, who have never been very, very lean, then this is something that's new to you, which it shouldn't be. and you all experience this, right? When you go on a diet, at the start of the diet, the thought of dark chocolate and raspberries is bitter, right? You're like, oh. At the end of your diet, you look forward to that bit of dark chocolate the most. It's so sweet, right? How much does that your taste change when you get into that routine, right? So, in that situation, there, am I more likely to want to go and binge on donuts? Like, I'm not, because I have taste for things that now I can be satisfied by a strawberry, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds silly, but it's so true. And this has come from restriction. And then we look at things like Slimming World, Weight Watchers. One of my wife's best friends has just lost a lot of weight with Slimming World. She does it quite a lot, amazing, right? But she's got, and again, I don't take clients on really anymore, but she's her best friend's husband is a pretty accomplished PT, I'd say. I mentor other PTs. Right. She never asked. What does that say about the fitness industry? That people are choosing not to go and get a personal trainer, but are choosing to go to Weight Watchers and Slimming World. It suggests, one, there's a lack of trust in the industry, but also there's an element of, well, I know that it's going to be complicated to go to a personal trainer. Whereas if I go to Slimming World, it is easy. And when coaches go, here's your numbers, I'll see you next week, they have every food in the world. So if you could create something that is simple, and you could package something up, whether that is a meal plan structure or whatever else, so they just eat the same thing every day. We've told you why that benefits you earlier on in this show. And if you can do that, then that becomes their break glass and emergency diet. The problem with these fancy recipes, that's great when someone's motivated. And I see most 95% of coaches that I work with are great at having clients lose first 5 kilos, can't get them to lose the last 5. Because when the initial motivation is gone, they have nothing, right? And if you've got someone that they requires so much effort just to keep this diet going, what happens when someone gets sick in the family? What happens when work picks up? What happens when they go on holiday? They fall back onto their old routines. Whereas you can make it so simple just to go, here is my basic diet that I follow. They fall back onto this. And then you might have more, rather than toxins and stress management being this complicated tip of the iceberg that's overwhelming. We've now got this base layer. We're not thinking about food anymore. Right, okay, now let's start looking at some of the stuff in your life. It's a much better conversation when so much of your decision fatigue is taken up by creating chocolate orange cream egg granola bars
that taste so good you're going to eat through them all in one day and then go, shit, now I've got to create another batch and I've blown my calories for the day. Super quickly, in terms of the trailer for this advert, you have to use the clip, I've been satisfied by a strawberry. That has to go in the trailer.
Oh, I will let Graphic know.
With really dramatic music. I've been satisfied by a strawberry?
Oh my gosh, should that be the title? I've been satisfied by a strawberry.
Oh my God.
I'm changing this now. Recording overview. It was testosterone was falling. I've been satisfied by a strawberry.
Satisfied by a strawberry. That's incredible. Just to finish that, you've hit the nail on the head. Our role in the industry is not to fix everybody's hormonal health, mental health, emotional health, liver health. It's just not. That's not within our remit at all. Our industry exists to help people, as soft and basic as it sounds, to build the right habits that will enable them to fix all those things through proper nutrition, through proper meal structure, through habitual change and right type of exercise that helps them get towards whatever their goal is. Let's not forget that. We as PTs are not the saviors of the universe. We're not. We're not Elon Musk in a gym, sadly, even though you might think you are. We're not. We are helping people change their lives. We are not out here saving lives or anything like that. We're helping people move from this very, very negative environment to a slightly more positive one, to hopefully a much, much more positive one where they won't need us anymore.
Exactly. So for people who want to learn more about you, because I know you're putting some free stuff out soon for regards to all this stuff, where are people finding it?
Lost you there, sorry, bud. Literally, the last minute and we lose connection. I'm assuming you.
Yeah, for people, because we know you're putting some free content out there soon for all this stuff. Where are people finding you?
Some freebies that are going to help you enact that basic change, basically, and hopefully lose your first 5 kilos without needing to jump on with me. And then when you want to go to the next level, hi, I'm here, I can help. And I'm never going to tell you how to eat a low-calorie fake-away version of a cream egg or a kebab. But if you find me on Instagram at Fat Loss Fastlane, I would really, really prefer it if you actually find me on Facebook at Fat Loss Fastlane, because my Instagram's fucked and my Facebook is not fucked. So come spend some time with me on Facebook. Yeah, let's do that.
But yeah, all right, I'll take that. Well, I'm also Kingsley Dutton on Facebook, but my Instagram is less fucked. So at Kingsley Dutton is me on Instagram, mate. But pleasure as always. Catch you soon. Thank you for listening to the Self-Made Podcast. If you're like me and like binge watching podcast episodes, click here to watch our latest episode. Or if you want to stay in touch and find out when the next episode goes live, click here to subscribe to the channel.